is a Bramble Jam podcast.
Welcome to Girls Gone Hallmark, a Hallmark review podcast. I'm Megan, and I'm a longtime Hallmark fan.
I'm Wendy. I'm a former Hallmark hater.
Today we are discussing The Way Home, Season 3, Episode 3, Live and Let Die, which originally aired on the Hallmark Channel on Friday, January 10th, streaming next day on Hallmark Plus. If you want to catch up with us, if you want to message us your thoughts, if you want to see what we're talking about, follow us on Instagram. We are Girls Gone Hallmark.
You want to hear a funny message we got?
Yeah.
Late Friday night.
Yeah.
Last week. It was from longtime listener Michelle. She's like, you guys have to be getting screeners of these because I know there's no way you're recording these on Friday night and pushing them out live.
You don't know that. Maybe that's our Friday night plan, man. You don't know.
I would love to hear from the listeners. How do you guys like the Friday night drop? Are you listening right after the episode airs on Hallmark Channel, or are you just picking up this podcast episode like over the weekend?
Yeah. How many of you are watching on Friday nights?
And then looking for answers or discussion or...
And also, when are you watching this show? Like, I feel like a Friday night drop's a real choice.
Mm-hmm.
So when are you watching? Are you recording to watch over the weekend? Are you watching on Hallmark Plus at your leisure? Let us know.
Yeah, I'm so curious.
We did publish a second listener mailbag episode yesterday on Thursday, and we will continue to do them as long as we have enough feedback that makes it make sense to do. So if you have thoughts, opinions, questions, email us, girlsgonehallmark@gmail.com. You can DM us on Instagram. You can message them in our Facebook group, wherever. We compile them. Some come from YouTube, some come from Spotify.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into season 3, episode 3. What I was thinking as I was watching this is sometimes we get episodes that jump all around, and sometimes we get episodes that are more focused. And I started to think this one would be more focused, and it is not. There's quite a bit
Of jumping in different time.
Just a lot of storylines happening.
Yeah.
A lot of timelines.
Yeah, my notes are like, they go 74, present day, 74, present day, 74, present day.
Yes.
It's a lot. And then it's like 74, Kat and Alice, 74, Colton and Evelyn. It's all over the place.
It is all over the place. So let's try and synthesize it. And let's start in 1974 with Rick's funeral. And my notes say, hence the reason Colton is in a vest.
Yeah, he wasn't out cater waitering in 2025.
Nor was he in Amish-like wear.
Yes. The question remains, though, was he trying to go somewhere or was he coming back from somewhere? It was unclear still.
That is still unclear. And while we are acting as if Colton is a time traveler, and there's a lot in this episode to suggest that, we haven't actually seen him time travel.
Correct.
We all accept that is the case, but we've seen him in other times.
There's no fact yet.
Yes. But we're just putting the pieces together. So back in 1974, Alice goes back pretty much immediately. And let's hear some things we learned. One, Vic blames Colton for Rick's death. And this to me is like another nail in the coffin of the Landry-Augustine relationship. Mm-hmm. We kind of knew from the past that Vic always felt like the Augustines got the short end of the stick. They weren't recognized
as founders.
Yeah, as the elite in Port Haven, as important to their history. And I feel like this just is fuel to the fire of reasons he is anti-Landry. One comment that was made in our listener mailbag episode was, did Alice push herself into the pond to save Colton the night of that accident? And while I'm not really buying that Alice pushed herself in, I do think there's something to Alice being sent back specifically to that day and time. Yes, it's when Del meets Colton.
I don't think she's there for their love story, their origin story.
No, I think she was there to save Colton.
Yeah.
Because even Colton himself says, you're the reason I'm still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Alice seems to be trying to make sure that Del and Colton still happen.
Right.
She says to Colton, don't forget Rick's advice. Life's too short not to dream big. Like, still go after Dell. Like Rick would want that for
Yeah,
you.
she's encouraging him to still go after Dell if he was interested in her.
There's kind of a speed bump there, though, and it's Evelyn.
Poor Evelyn.
I know. I really love the character of Evelyn, but she's not going to Morocco.
She needs to stay home and she wants to like look after Colton, basically, now that Colton's lost his best friend.
Yeah, and Evelyn does reveal that she's in love with Colton to Alice, and Alice is like, oh. I was like, are you acting? Because it seemed very obvious to me.
I know.
And Alice is like, well, time to move on. And Evelyn's like, can't move on that quickly.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've seen the last of the Evelyn Colton Dell love triangle.
Yeah, well, and now it makes more, well, it doesn't, not that it makes more sense, but like considering what we know of Evelyn and Dell's tense relationship as they even got older.
Yeah.
I mean, now we see the origin is like Dell disrupts what maybe could have been, obviously, between Evelyn and Colton. So
now, Dell and Colton don't really have any interaction in this episode. She kind of exists on the periphery. She does like quite literally, like she's looking in to coils from the outside. She also delivers like a meal to Vic, to the Augustine family, but Vic's the only one we ever actually see face to face. And so they're keeping Dell in the narrative, but the Dell and Colton storyline isn't really moving forward at this point.
right. Which, I mean, how could it? Like, Colton just lost his best friend. I guess you can operate through grief. There could be a love story emerging as well, but
Probably not the day of his funeral.
yeah.
There's a really important scene during this funeral scene that plays into our kind of next key plot point, which is the Elliot and Vic fallout.
Yes, okay.
I mean, what are your thoughts about this?
Are we talking about when Alice in 74, when Alice sees the funeral procession go by and she sees Vic in the car wearing Rick's jersey?
Well, yeah.
And then later in present day, after Elliot and Vic have had this like huge blowout over Vic trying to steal from him, Elliot comes to him almost like with an olive branch of, here is your brother's jersey. I thought it might be important to you to have.
Yeah, because Alice comes to Elliot and where they're trying to humanize Vic a little bit here. Like that, there's that slow motion scene. And that was really well shot because if you look in the car, I actually watched it twice, you can't see Vic's parents clearly. Like their faces are partially obscured, but you see Vic and he makes straight on eye contact with Alice. And I think Alice is like, this little boy who, grows up to be a terrible human. He lost his idol.
Yeah.
And so she kind of presents that to Elliot. Like, maybe you should have all the information about where your dad is coming from.
Right. And then Elliot and Vic do have what I feel is a very meaningful conversation where Vic like lays bare and says like, I was not the favorite.
Yes.
Like my parents would have rather seen me die than Rick. And I thought in that moment, I was like, wow, we're really finally like seeing why Vic is the way he is. It does not give any context of why he is so terrible to Elliot, though.
Agree.
I have a feeling more is coming here.
Well, sure, because they do seem to come to an understanding, right? And they had been fighting all this time about the ring. Vic says some horrible things to Elliot about Kat. Vic says horrible things about the Landrys in general, and Dell confronts him.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Vic and Elliot are having it out over this ring, and Vic says something like he calls Elliot's ex, and Elliot goes, "You called Emma?" And I was like, oh, is this the first time we're giving her a name? Maybe not. Like perhaps in season 1 or 2, they have mentioned her by name. But again, in season 3, I'm like, are we going to see Emma in the future?
Oh, I don't know.
In terms of like this season, I just thought it was like such a weird, why are we giving this character who we don't know or have any story about? We really don't know a ton of backstory about Elliot's marriage to her.
I feel like we must have heard her name because Nick was in the wedding, right?
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
I don't know if it's meaningful, but we do learn that, you know, Elliot is really attached to this ring, but obviously not enough that he gave it to his first wife. This really chaps Vic. Like he's just like anti-Landry. He cannot believe that his son is ending up with a Landry, that Landry's moving into his former home.
Yeah. In this scene, we see Elliot finally like decides to give Vic the ring. He pulls out the box and is like, here's the ring. They open the box. The ring is not the ring I thought it was.
The ring is not the ring you thought it was. No.
No, but still, I'm telling you, why do we have a tale of two rings in this show? Doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. Pulls out this ring and I was like, are we getting twisted over this, like what looks like costume jewelry to me?
I mean, it's just the sentimental
Okay, fine.
piece of it. It's a mother's ring.
I thought it was nice that Elliot was like, okay, here, you can have it. And Vic's like, no, it's fine. Obviously, at the end of the episode, I know we're skipping around a bit, but Vic takes the ring.
Vic takes the ring.
Why? Because Vic gonna Vic?
I think so. Yeah, I think, he has this brief moment of goodness. Elliot says, are you actually getting married or you just need the money? And Vic's like, no, I am. And you should be the one to carry on the family legacy. And we think that maybe Vic has changed, but he has not.
He has not changed. He was gone in the light of the morning with the ring.
Poor Elliot.
I mean, burn me once.
I know.
It's not the same. Fool me once.
Yes.
I know. Poor Elliot. There is a nice full circle moment here before Vic leaves in the morning where Del confronts Vic at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
And of course, we see Del early in 74. After Rick dies, she goes and brings food to the Augustine family as a gesture
Yes.
of goodwill, whatever. She sees him at the farmer's market. He's like on the phone screaming at somebody. She goes over again, like with an offering, and he's such a dick to her.
Yeah, I want your dry biscuits.
I love that she just hands him his ass.
Yeah.
And in front of Elliot. And then she turns around. She's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you saw that. And Elliot's like, I'm not. And it's nice to see Elliot have people stand up for him. Even because, like, think about it. Like, obviously, Vic was not a great dad to Elliot. That's why Elliot was taking shelter up in the Landry's, cabin or loft or whatever they call that clubhouse, right? I think there's some things to unwind there. I think Colton knew more, obviously, about like about Vic and Elliot, and maybe Elliot's that baby. I don't know, but
Yeah, but Colton knew what Elliot was dealing with. Colton had the backstory on Vic because he had grown up with him.
Sure. And so now we see Del obviously standing up for Elliot even as an adult. I just think it's nice that the Landrys have been there for Elliot for so long.
Yeah, Vic's perception of them is not the reality of them in present day. The Landry Augustine beef isn't, they don't look down on Elliot as an Augustine.
Right.
I think it's especially meaningful because at the beginning of the episode, Kat and Elliot reveal that they're moving into together and Del blows up. We see a real reemergence of vintage Del, the Del that we've kind of been almost missing this season.
The one who was like unnecessarily mean to Kat.
I agree. And later, Elliot and Jacob discuss kind of that blow up she had, and Elliot feels like, oh, I thought she was on my side. And of course, it's not about him. It's Del and Kat's relationship is oil and water, and Del can't help but feel judgmental about Kat's choices.
I think Del has an issue with control. I mean, obviously, even the first two episodes, we see that she's trying to contain Jacob. Is she trying to contain Kat here as well?
Well, I think you make a good point because at one point before Kat's going to go time traveling again, Del's like, where are you going? And Kat's like, I am an adult and you will not control my comings and goings.
I'm going to do whatever the F I want to do.
I do find it odd that Kat is moving out of the house where her child lives.
I think that's weird too.
Yeah,
Why
she's
wouldn't Alice just come live with Elliot and Kat?
Agree. I do think there is a space issue. It's not really tenable for a mother and daughter to share a bedroom. Nobody wants to move to the basement. They need to make some arrangements. I think Kat and Alice should live in the same house. Even living next door, I think is a little odd. But I think Dell goes too far in this moment. And so I think for Elliot to see her come to his defense, he realizes that it's not about him. It's not Dell disapproving of him.
Yeah, right.
Kat choosing Elliot.
Right. Yeah, Dell is like so mean. Thanks for ruining dinner, Catherine. I was like, yikes.
Yes.
I mean, the way Andy McDowell can just like spit these lines to you with such venom, this is very good acting.
Speaking of Dell's control, Jacob does start to re-emerge into society, and he makes his grand debut at the farmer's market to lots of staring.
Yeah, don't you like that? Because you can kind of hear the whispering, like, he's been gone for 20 years.
Yes.
And yeah, it was nicely done.
So I have some questions about the farmer's market. They do make a comment about like it being a weekly thing. So if the family has been going sans Jacob all of this time, don't you think that upon Jacob's return, there's this big press conference. Everyone knows Jacob's back, whether or not they're seeing him. Don't you think those questions would people would have been whispering about the Landrys all that time anyway?
Yes, I do.
The other question is, we also learn during this farmer's market scene that Dell and Rita, Dell's been icing Rita out, according to Kat. So they've just been next to each other this whole time, like not speaking for all these months until now.
That's a good question because it makes it kind of seem like maybe the farmer's market is only a summer thing, but we're at the end of summer. So you're right. They would have been like in the same circles.
Yes. There's
all summer long.
Farmers market stalls are next to each other.
Yeah.
But Dell and Rita do reconnect. And I find it, as you mentioned in our listener mailbag episode, Rita's gonna Rita. She always makes me laugh. And Dell says to Rita, I know you mean well, but you ask too many questions. And you could understand that from Dell's perspective. She's like, I do not have Rita energy in me right now while dealing with the return of my son.
Well, of course, because Rita's going to be like, ask 20 questions about Jacob's disappearance, and Dell is trying to keep things controlled in terms of like what information is being shared.
Yeah, Rita's going to force her deeper into a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
There is some funny commentary about Rita's reclaimed wood art.
I thought that was funny.
Dell's like, you can't charge $150. And Rita's like, I'm going to get that summer people money.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. And I did like how Rita was like, what's going on with you and Sam? Like, she was there for the tea.
Yes. And they do reconnect at the end of the episode. And Dell admits that she's struggling with all of the changes that she's faced with right now.
Well, duh.
Yeah.
I mean, she can't confide in Rita, really.
No,
she's still keeping a very big lie.
Yes, she's telling surface truths about, she's struggling with, Jacob does have to reintegrate, but she's having a hard time with allowing that. Kat's moving out. Kat's an adult. Dell's struggling. And you're right. She can't really turn to Rita for the truth. Jacob and Danny run into each other at the farmer's market. And poor Danny, they go get a drink, and Danny still feels guilty.
I have some questions here.
Yeah.
Danny and Jacob at the bar I know it's not meant to be funny, but there are some funny elements to it because Jacob talks like old-timey.
Yes.
I thought it was very funny. And Danny asks a lot of questions about like, modern farming and, there was like some contention there about like old time versus modern days. I thought it was really well done.
Yes.
My question is, there's this whole thing about Jacob asks Danny like how he's been. And Danny pulls out the article, like he's carrying around this article
about Jacob's return.
Wallet, right? And Danny feels responsible still to this day about Jacob being missing. Now, Jacob tells him that it is his own choice. Like he's like trying to like reassure him, like, you had nothing to do. You did not push me in the water. He says, you did not push me into the water. And Jacob looks kind of concerned. And I'm wondering, is this the first time we've talked about Jacob and Danny being at the pond? Because I thought, if you go back to season 1, they were at that carnival and they were over the cliff area and the ocean, the point? No, the cove?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they thought he went missing there.
Yeah, because Danny threw his
Yes.
bear into the ocean.
But were they really messing around by the pond? Was Danny with him at the pond?
That's not how I read that. I noticed Jacob's concerned look. I think Jacob's concerned look is he made a mistake because he says, I went into the water on my own. And I think we're meant to believe that Jacob's not talking about the pond there, that he was picked up by this family. I forget what they said. Like, how did they find him? Like, did he wash up on shore?
Something like that, I think.
So I think Jacob is suggesting like he went into like the water, perhaps looking for his bear, whatever the situation was.
Okay.
But I didn't read it as Jacob and Danny were lying about that being at the beach, but more that Jacob was like, oh gosh, have I said too much when I talk about like I went into the water?
Got it. Okay.
That's my understanding.
Good.
But I did bump on his face. He was like, ooh.
Yeah. Very interesting. You know that actor Spencer McPherson plays Jacob? I think he's really good as Jacob, as adult Jacob.
Oh, I love Spencer McPherson.
He's really great, right?
Yeah, I would highly recommend people seek out his other stuff. He's in a series called School Spirits. Season 1 is on Netflix, but I believe it's a Paramount Plus show, and there is a season 2 coming. It's a cool show.
This show isn't supposed to be like comedic, but there are some like when he comes home drunk,
That's real funny.
super funny, right?
It's funny when he's drunk at the bar and he's like, bar wench.
Yeah.
Give me some of your finest lager or whatever.
Uh-huh. I think it's really funny
And Dan
too.
is like, is that a line from a movie? Yeah, when he drops into 1814 vernacular when he's drunk is really funny. And I like that they have Kat like bringing him home. And I like that she kind of lightheartedly is like, hey, we missed out on this. Like big
Yeah.
sisters sneaking their drunk brother past
Yeah.
their mom.
I really like it.
But the net of that is that Jacob feels like the world is passing him by because he doesn't really know who he is here. He doesn't know, his sister is moving on. Danny has this job. He's working at Lingermore. We get like a Lingermore reference.
Yeah.
Not a lot more information there, but Jacob's struggling too, as one might imagine.
Could you imagine? I mean, time travel or not, if you were, an amnesia patient or something and you wake up and life has passed you by, like you don't know where your place is in the world.
Or if he were in fact living off the grid for 24 years.
So wild.
Yeah, just the technology advances alone would blow your mind.
Yeah, I don't know how one like acclimates to being in 2025 after spending your entire life sans 8 years or whatever in the 1800s. It's wild.
Yeah, my kids love the new Jumanji movie, and in it there's like a bit where a character played by Colin Hanks has been like stuck in the video game for 30 years. And one of the characters keeps talking about her phone, like how she's struggling being without her phone. He's like, does phone mean something different in 2021 than it used to? Because obviously he's from the 80s
Yeah.
or the 90s where, we didn't have mobile computers. Anyway,
So funny.
That line has always made me laugh. We have Kat time traveling back to 1974.
This to me is the most interesting storyline from the entire episode. Mostly because of who she meets in 1974 out in the woods.
Yeah, so you hear that giggling, right? Which is the same or similar giggling as Alice heard when she first emerged in the woods in 1974. And it turns out to belong to Fern Landry, who's Colton's grandmother. And it's like mostly nonsensical. Like when Kat's talking to her, she's either speaking in riddles or she's speaking nonsense. It's hard. We don't know for sure. And I was like poring over her words. Like she talks about her daughter-in-law and talks about her son. And I was like, what are we talking about here? Like what has happened?
The
What's
number of
history
times
here?
I rewound it to listen to it again as I'm like note taking, like what exactly is she saying here?
Yes.
Because I'm like, who is she referring to? Because this is Kat's great grandmother. Is that right?
Yeah, her dad's grandmother.
Okay. And so they meet out by the pond or whatever in the woods, or I don't know what you call that landscape. And then they go back to the Landry farm and they're having cookies. And Kat was like, oh, these are like what grandma would make. So that would be Fern's daughter-in-law. We don't know who that person is. That's Colton's mom. She doesn't have a name, right?
Yeah.
There was something telling in this whole scene.
Well, she keeps calling her kitty cat.
Yes.
And so the question that arises is, A, does she think Cat is someone else who obviously has the nickname Kitty Cat? Or has Cat met her before? Or what does Fern know from time traveling? Like, has Colton time traveled, returned to her, shared information about his future daughter? I mean, it's also absurd, right? But what does Fern know?
Yeah, so Fern talks about like how great her daughter-in-law is. And she says specifically, like, she raised 2 boys, she kept the farm going on her own, and then she lost their son.
So is that Colton's brother?
I don't know. I'm making the emoji hands up.
Shrug emoji?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
And then Fern says to Kat, it's nice someone's using the pond again. And so
Yeah.
this like, like Kat's like, what? You know, Kat's looking for confirmation that like Colton knew about time travel. And she asks him, is Colton specifically using the pond? And Fern says, I fear this is what I don't like. Is this nonsense? She says, I fear he was the one, if not his father, his brother. It was him, but I was wrong. What does that mean?
So many more questions than answers in this scene.
Yeah, I have no idea. And then she says, like, if she wants answers to questions, she needs to ask the right questions.
And then
she's
she
like,
speaks in some riddle about 1965.
she's singing like some singy-songy thing about like dead in 65, alive in 65, whatever. Oh, 65 thought they'd die, 65 still alive. What any of that means, I don't know. We later hear Evelyn singing that song.
We later hear Evelyn singing that song, and then we even later, present day, Kat and Alice are at the Herald, and Kat is trying to make sense of that, and they decide to start digging through the archives, which, dun dun dun, Casey had organized.
Yes.
And they come across a file with a Post-it note that Casey had left behind, but the file itself is empty. But they also come across an article about the town wanting to fill in the pond in 1965.
Right. It's a flyer, like for a town meeting to fill in the Landry Pond
So
from 1965. I'm like, are we going to go back to 65 at some point?
Fade to Black.
Yeah, that was the end of the episode.
However, let's also discuss the other revelation that Kat makes before she returns. She's on the banks of the pond and she overhears Colton and Evelyn talking. And this is another scene that goes to Kat being the absolute worst time traveler ever. I mean, it's like Scooby-Doo out there, the way she hides behind the tree. But she does overhear Colton and Evelyn talking about jumping in the pond and referencing time travel. And Colton says, you're not going to go in. And Evelyn says, to the pond without you? Never.
Yeah.
So there's also more secrets here because Evelyn asks Colton, she asks him about being in the pond because Alice had told Evelyn that she found Colton in the pond. She says, you can tell me anything. And she says, I need to tell you something, which is when they're interrupted by Kat's breaking of a stick.
Yes.
And Evelyn's like, no, it's probably just Fern dancing around out here.
Yeah. So what do you think Colton was going to share here at this point?
No, Evelyn was going to tell Colton something.
I think Evelyn was going to tell Colton that she loved him. That's what I think was happening.
Yeah, probably.
But Colton makes some kind of weird cryptic comment about like, would you tell me if you've done something wrong? So are we led to believe that Colton has done something wrong by using the pond? Did he change the future somehow?
Or did he disobey by using the pond? Like, was he told stay away?
Perhaps because he does reference his mom a lot and about his mom like getting mad at him, his mom being very upset, especially after Rick's funeral. So yeah, more to come there. Can we talk about the reintroduction of Noah?
Noah's back, baby.
I'm happy that Alice has a peer to play with
In her current time.
in current day. Yes.
Me too. He's back with his combo food truck. And she kind of like forgives him kind of quickly. Like she gives him a little bit
I
of
don't
a
even
hard
remember
time.
what their beef was. Like he just was like,
He bounced. I don't know that there was beef other than he was like, I can't do this, right? Wasn't that the whole thing?
I can't recall.
And so
somebody please email us and let us know.
Some secret going on there, because I feel like Noah had secrets that we never fully discovered, and they're not addressing them. Like, he went away to do a business course and he's back and he's taken over his grandfather's business, and it's a coffee truck by day and a fish and chips truck by night. You know, I kind of love it because he does come to the Landry farm at the end of the episode, ostensibly to give her tips. Mm-hmm. And she's like, you know, this isn't a good idea. And then she kisses him. And her line is somewhat reminiscent of Evelyn. She says she doesn't want the magic to pass her by.
Yeah.
And I love it. Like, she's 17, man. Dig in.
Yeah,
You do not need
totally.
to find the great love of your life. Just have fun.
Exactly. You had like some offshoot things you wanted to
A couple little small revelations. Sam and Dell's relationship does come to light because Elliot and Kat discover the remains of their hookups in the barn. It is kind of funny because they like turn on the music and Kat's like, whoa, because they're going to hook up in the barn now, which is kind of weird.
Agree. I thought for Hallmark, I was like, whoa, she like
Yeah,
pushes
Kat
him down
climbs
on the
top
bed.
of him. I thought so too. Pretty risque hookup. But she turns on the music. It is not apparently the Kat and Elliot makeout mixtape. It is the Sam and Dell makeout mixtape. And then Elliot's like, wait a minute, you don't drink Pinot, you drink Cab. Someone else has been here.
I kind of,
Goldilocks.
sorry, feel kind of weird about it.
Yes, I agree. And then at dinner, Elliot's like, nice Pinot, Dell. And of course, Dell does reveal that she and Sam are an item, and everyone's happy about that. Sam's not in this episode because he's traveling.
Time traveling.
Oh, you think
No, I
Sam's a
don't.
time traveler?
No, I don't. But who knows? No, I think he's off visiting his grandkids like he said he was.
And we have addressed all of our other small revelations throughout the rest of the episode.
Let's talk about our ongoing questions.
Oh, Lord. Let me pull up that list. I'm just going to run through these questions once again, see if any of them have been answered and if we have anything else to ask. Who pushed Alice in and what's the motive? Who's the baby in the basket and who left the baby in the basket? Alice and Colton singing together. What's the origin story of that? How much did Colton know about the pond? I mean, we know a little bit more there, but not much. What was Colton warning Jacob about? Oh, what's the story behind Colton never making an actual record? Who's writing the letters to Dell? What is the lie that they're referring to? Why did Jacob go looking for the Polaroids? What is the significance of the clock found at Elliot's wall? What's going on with Thomas? How did the painting of Kat get to Lingermore? I had a thought about that. And I think if Evelyn is a time traveler, as we are to believe at the end of this episode, perhaps Evelyn had something to do with that. Mm-hmm. Will we see Susanna and Thomas again? Oh, we completely forgot. The question is that message written in invisible ink that was revealed by Kat spilled red wine, in fact, from Colton? We do find the matching message in the books. They put it together, but we learned that obviously Evelyn never found the message.
Right.
It is clearly from Colton. It is a message to Evelyn about meeting at the pond. The rings. There's still more going on with both of these rings.
The rings.
The rings. I mean, new questions we need to, Fern. What's the deal there? Fern / Colton's mom / 1965.
Yeah.
/ the one. I can't even synthesize this into a question that is grammatically correct because it's just all a jumble in my brain. What does it all mean?
Yeah.
Any additional questions?
No.
Okay. Is Vic coming back? Are we going to see Emma again? Does Chris Holden Reed have bots working on for him?
Does he have bots working for him? I think so. I don't think we're going to see Thomas again. I think so too. But I would love to see Thomas and Susanna in the future somehow. In present day.
Oh, yeah.
Somehow, some way.
Oh my goodness.
Could you imagine how that would like disrupt things? It'd be crazy. I would love it. But then that also means that Cyrus Goodwin could come in and he could get Jacob.
Oh my gosh.
Jacob's not safe in present day.
Do we have extradition back to 1814?
I don't know.
Yeah,
really.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Girls Gone Hallmark, a Bramble Jam podcast. If you love this podcast, we love your 5-star ratings and reviews. We see those rating numbers climbing in the Apple Podcast app. Keep them coming. It's the very best way you can support this podcast. We'll be back next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, friends, before we go, just a quick heads up. You're about to hear some ads. These little gems help us keep the show running and the Hallmark love flowing. So do with that info what you will. Grab a snack, hit the skip button, or maybe, just maybe, listen in and discover your new favorite product. Bye.